I used to think love was simple, until I met him. She is my destiny, my fate, yet also my deepest wound. Chapter 28 Aspiring Lover Maximus POV. I woke up in the middle of the night. An overwhelming, inexplicable urge pushing me to go to her. I knew she had the door locked, but that wouldn't stop me. There was no way I was going to ignore this pull. Silently, I maneuvered my way into her room and found her lying there. The soft rise and fall of her chest, signaling her peaceful sleep. She looked so serene, so vulnerable in that moment. I leaned down, brushing a gentle kiss against her forehead. As my lips made contact with her skin, goosebumps surged across my body, and a rush of warmth spread through me. I couldn't explain it how her presence, even while she was unaware, had this magnetic effect on me. I could feel her energy, even in the stillness of sleep. I sat in the armchair next to her bed, unable to look away, as if watching her was the only thing that mattered in that moment. Slowly, my eyelids grew heavier, and I drifted off, my thoughts lost in the softness of the night. When I woke up again, the light of dawn filtering through the curtains, I quietly slipped back to my own room. I took a fast shower, trying to shake the lingering warmth of her presence from my skin, and headed straight to the training fields. For the first time in a long while. Light. Happy. It was strange, absurd, even that such feelings had emerged from simply sharing the same room with her. Just the thought of it seemed ludicrous, but it was undeniable. As I trained, a question lingered, pressing against my mind like an insistent weight. Why, all of a sudden, did I feel so dependent on her? I couldn't imagine my life without her now. It was as if she had become a part of me, something I had always needed, but never knew I was missing. I wanted her around me, constantly. To smell her, to touch her. Every fiber of my being craved her in a way I hadn't anticipated. But that was dangerous. I had pushed her away before. I had done well at keeping my distance. So why now? Why did she have the power to break down the walls I had carefully built around myself? Deep down, I knew this was wrong. I couldn't allow myself to be attached to her, not like this. If I did, it would be the end of me. The weight of the throne, the responsibility, the risks they couldn't afford any distractions. And yet, there I was, distracted beyond measure. I finished my training with the warriors, my mind still swirling with conflicting emotions. I took a quick shower, trying to shake off the thoughts that were clouding my mind, and made my way to my office. There was no time for this. There were too many things to handle, too much at stake. The time to claim the throne was fast approaching. 6 months. That was all I had left. With the chaos surrounding the lunar ceremony and my accident, many matters had been put on hold. But now, it was time to get back to work. I opened the door to my office, and there was Chris, already seated at his desk, typing away on his laptop. He looked up as I entered and gave me a nod. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Maximus, he greeted me. Morning, I muttered, trying to push all thoughts of Adelina from my mind as I settled into my chair. There was no room for weakness now. I see someone didn't have a good time last night, Chris remarked, glancing at me with a raised eyebrow. At least you should be satisfied with the ceremony. Everything went well. Yesterday was a tough day, but I have to admit, the lunar ceremony was a success. We made a solid impression on the council and the other alphas. That's more than enough for me, I replied, running a hand through my hair. Chris leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp. You know, the real reason it went so well was Adelina. The council members were all impressed by her. She demonstrated intelligence. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, and a depth of knowledge that's rare even for someone in her position. I was honestly blown away by her. She has all the qualities needed to fill the role of queen of all werewolves. I can't even understand how you thought Gina could take such a position. She's completely useless. Chris' words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I knew they were true. Gina had never been the right fit. She was too shallow, too uninformed, too caught up in appearances. I can see through that now. Adelina, on the other hand, had proven herself capable in every aspect. Her wisdom, her grace under pressure, her understanding of the pack dynamics. The contrast was impossible to ignore. You're right, I muttered, finally acknowledging the truth. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She was never the one. Adelina, however, is everything we need. Her knowledge is vast, and her character, her brilliance, it's something I've never seen before. Chris nodded, clearly satisfied with my acknowledgement. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I cleared my throat, focusing on the matters at hand. Enough about the ceremony. We have more pressing issues. We need to figure out why Nicholas is staying here, and what his next move is. Second, I want Sonia here by midnight. Make it happen. Third, get me the details on the financial agreement between Jake's pack and Nicholas S. And lastly, tell Adelina to come to my office ASAP. Chris raised an eyebrow. You sure about this? You think she's ready for everything you're about to throw at her? She's more than ready. I wouldn't have her by my side if I didn't think so. I replied firmly. The truth was, despite everything, despite the pull I felt toward her and the complicated feelings swirling in my chest, I was certain of one thing: Adelina was more capable than anyone I had ever met. Now tell her to come. She can't. Chris replied. Why can't she? My frustration growing. Because she's at the hospital. Chris answered, his tone flat. What is she doing there? Now more annoyed than ever. Last time I checked, she works there, Chris said, his voice laced with irony. She doesn't have to work anymore. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My voice rising. Oh my goddess, what is wrong with this woman? I exclaimed in exasperation. I just couldn't understand her. Why did she have to act so oddly? Why couldn't she just be where I needed her to be? Didn't she tell you about it this morning when she woke up? Chris asked, his sarcasm apparent. I didn't see her, I replied, feeling frustrated. I left early. I had to train the new warriors. I explained, trying to justify myself. I thought on your first day together you'd want to stay with your mate, instead of training warriors. Chris eased playfully. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You know exactly what's going on between us. So please, stop giving me a hard time about it. Okay, Chris said, raising his hands in mock surrender, before continuing. However, yesterday you two looked like a normal couple. Everyone noticed. I just don't get it sometimes. Two young, beautiful people, who are also mates, and nothing's happening between you. What's wrong with you two? Man, whenever we're alone, she's distant and cold. She can't even stay with me for a minute. I can tell that she's attracted to me, but she manages to hold herself back. She doesn't trust me because of the things I've done in the past. But I like her. It's not a secret. I want her, just as she wants me. But you know my story. I can't let myself be affected by my feelings. I won't let myself be a victim. I admitted, feeling the weight of the words I had to say. I think you're wrong, Chris said softly. Adelina is different, just like you. Don't confuse different people and different circumstances. Each situation is unique. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. I muttered, but I was convinced. But I'm not going to risk it. Now enough with the chit-chat. Let's get to work. I want to report on Nicholas' movements by noon. Also, Those contracts I sign with the other packs need to be sent back. If anyone asks for me, they'll be at the hospital. If Sonia arrives before midnight, call me immediately. Why do you want Sonia here? Chris asked, genuinely curious. I have my reasons, I replied cryptically. Now and going to visit my beautiful Luna. Now you're talking, man, Chris said, his excitement apparent. Hold your horses. My visit is purely professional, I clarified, though my tone cowled and completely hid the underlying desire. I can imagine, Chris eased mockingly. Adelina SPOV. As I walked toward my office, I felt the weight of stairs following me, some warm, others tinged with envy, and a few outright disapproving of my newfound position. To be honest, I hadn't expected the level of attention that came with the title. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Was more captivating than I had anticipated, but I had always believed that true value came from one's character, not their title or position. I shortened and I won't let the opinions of others define me. I reminded myself. I was still the same Adelina who had walked through these halls yesterday, unaffected by the judgments of those around me. My title as Luna did not change who I was at my core. With a quiet, steadying sigh, I finally reached the door of my office. I paused briefly, preparing myself for the work that awaited. No time for distractions now. As I stepped inside, the sight of the mountain of folders on my desk immediately hit me. A pile of unfinished tasks, waiting for attention, all reminders of the time I'd spent navigating the chaos of the ceremony rather than my responsibilities. Today's going to be a long one, I thought with a resigned shake of my head. I'd have so much to catch up on, and that was just the start. There was a great deal at stake, and I needed to ensure everything was in order. 2 hours had passed as I worked diligently through the mountain of paperwork, barely pausing to take a break, when a knock at the door disrupted my focus. Mario stepped in, a wide grin spreading across his face. Good morning, Adelina. I've been looking for you everywhere. He greeted me enthusiastically, his voice filled with excitement. Good morning. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What's going on? Is there a problem with the annual budget or the financial data I sent you earlier? A flicker of concern crossing my mind. Relax. Neither of those. I just wanted to congratulate you. Yesterday, you were absolutely fantastic. I've heard nothing but positive feedback. The members of council, along with several other alphas, were really impressed with the depth of your knowledge on so many different topics. You were incredible. Well done, Mario exclaimed, clearly impressed. Thank you, Mario, I replied, my cheeks warming slightly. I'm not sure what to say. It's still hard to believe. Honestly, it's the first time in my life that I'm receiving praise for practically doing nothing. Don't be modest. Adelina, you didn't just do nothing. You blew people away. Your skill set is rare. And yesterday, you showed it off in front of everyone. You're not just the Luna of this pack, you're a force to be reckoned with. Mario continued, his sincerity evident. I smiled faintly at his words, but deep down, I couldn't help feeling a mixture of pride and disbelief. It was overwhelming to think that something I had done, something so natural to me, could have such an impact. Adelina, you don't give yourself enough credit. Your presence yesterday was just a fluke. It was the culmination of years of reading, working, and perfecting your character. It's not just what you know, but how you carry yourself, your exemplary behavior, your ethos, your quiet but undeniable strength. These things made the real difference. People took notice, and personally, I'm proud to work alongside someone like you, Mario added, his tone warm and appreciative. I blushed at his praise, my cheeks turning crimson. Honestly, what can I say? Right now, I'm embarrassed. I wasn't expecting all this attention. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Trying to brush off the compliment, Mario chuckled, clearly enjoying my reaction. You shouldn't be embarrassed. You've earned it. But there was one thing that stood out to me yesterday. I looked at him curiously. What do you mean? The only blemish on an otherwise perfect day might be in Maximus' behavior. He gave me the impression that his constant presence was almost suffocating you, Mario remarked, his tone shifting slightly. I hesitated, my instinct to defend Maximus kicking in. But before I could say anything, Mario quickly interjected. Don't try to cover for him. I was paying attention. It's obvious that he has you right there beside him. He doesn't truly appreciate you. His behavior is so possessive he's just too blind to see what you bring to the table. He's used to women with a submissive spirit, but you, Adelina, you are strong, refined, and full of dignity. He doesn't deserve you. He can't appreciate your inner beauty the way you deserve to be appreciated, Mario said, his words cutting through the air with surprising sharpness. For a moment, I was silent. I hadn't expected him to be so direct, but there was something about his honesty that struck a chord within me. A part of me wanted to argue, but another part of me knew he was strong. I just didn't know what to say. He stepped closer to me than was necessary, and as we stood in silence for a few moments, I felt the tension rising. Then, Maximus' voice cut through the air, his tone tinged with irritation. Am I interrupting something? His presence immediately commanding. Mario, caught off guard, quickly stepped back, while I was left standing there, speechless. For some reason, I felt like he'd been caught doing something wrong, even though I knew I hadn't. Drive AKO? Of course not, Mario said, his voice smooth, trying to cover the awkwardness. We were just reviewing the annual budget. I see that, Maximus responded sarcastically, his eyes narrowing slightly. His voice shifted to a more authoritative tone. If you don't mind, I'd like to be alone with my mate, Lufa. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. With your permission, Mario replied, his expression hard to read. Before he exited, he turned back to me. Adelina, I'll come by later for the rest. I nodded, but before I could say anything, Maximus cut in sharply. There's no need for you to come again. She won't be here. She'll spend the rest of her day with me. Oh, I see, Mario said, his disappointment evident. He left without another word, and the door clicked shut behind him. Maximus' gaze locked onto me as I stood frozen, too stunned to speak. Maximus took a few steps closer, his voice laced with a sharp edge. I have to admit, you have something about you that enchants everyone, especially men. Yesterday, it was Nicholas and several visitors who couldn't take their eyes off you. And today, I walk in to find Mario Lupoing you like HES ready to pounce. Maybe I shouldn't leave you alone for so long anymore. His words hit me harder than I expected, stirring up a mix of frustration and disbelief inside me. I forced myself to stand tall, keeping my voice steady. You misunderstood, I replied firmly, though a hint of annoyance seeped into my tone. Neither Nicholas nor Mario wants to be my lover. We were just working. Maximus' eyes darkened, and for a brief moment, I wondered if he might say something else. But instead, he stayed silent. He stared at me for a long beat, as if processing my words, before finally speaking again in a quieter, more controlled voice. I don't know why you insist on making things so complicated. Adelina, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. As if to himself, but I could sense his frustration, his jealousy simmering beneath the surface. The tension between us felt palpable, and I couldn't help but feel the sting of his words, even though I knew he didn't have a right to be angry. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I hadn't done anything wrong. Maximus' gaze darkened as his voice grew colder, a hint of possessiveness seeping through his words. Mario, you call him by his first name. He raised an eyebrow, the subtle challenge in his tone unmistakable. My suspicions were just confirmed. I want to remind you of the agreement we made. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Before I could even start to defend myself, Maximus took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. He reached out, gently placing a finger on my lips, silencing me before I could speak. Sure. His voice low and commanding. I didn't come here to make a scene. Adelina, what I said to Lupo earlier, I meant it. He took another step closer, his proximity making it difficult to focus. I want to spend the rest of my day with you, so pack your things and follow me. I blinked, momentarily thrown off by his sudden command. Where are we going? My curiosity getting the better of me despite the tension still hanging between us. A mischievous grin tugged at the corners of his lips, and for a moment, it's often the hardness in his eyes. It's a surprise. His smile broadening as he took another step closer, his confidence practically radiating off him. I hesitated, my mind racing, torn between staying and following him. The way he looked at me, so certain and commanding, made it hard to say no. Something about him always pulled at me, tempting me to give in. Come on, Adelina. His voice soft but firm. Trust me, you'll like it. Reluctantly, I gathered my things, my thoughts swirling. What did he have planned? And why did it feel like I was walking into something I couldn't control? I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to make of his mood swing, but something about his expression, that half smile, made it impossible to turn down the curiosity that stirred within me. All right, I finally said, though I had no idea what he was planning. I'll pack quickly. As I gathered a few things, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions: confusion, irritation, and something else I couldn't quite place. But for now, I had to follow his lead. Whatever this surprise was, I knew it would change the course of my day and perhaps something deeper between us. Chapter 29: The Picnic. Adelina SPOV. We hopped into the Jeep, the engine rumbling to life as we began our drive toward the forest. The air was fresh, the scent of pine and earth filling the car as we drove deeper into the woods. After a while, the road began to narrow, leading us to a dead end. Maximus parked the Jeep and we both stepped out, with him carrying a large wicker basket, its contents hidden beneath a cloth. We ventured on foot, the forest around us alive with the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. We passed the clearing with the secret rock, a place I had visited once in passing but never truly explored, and made our way to a small, serene lake. A gentle waterfall cascaded over rocks, the water sparkling in the sunlight. It was a sight so beautiful that it took my breath away. I had never seen this place before, nor had I even known of its existence. The water lapped gently against the shore, and the area around the lake was surrounded by lush greenery, with wildflowers in every color imaginable, dotting the soft grass. A few meters away, tall oaks and graceful willows swayed in the breeze. Maximus chose one of the oaks, its sturdy trunk offering the perfect place to rest. We laid down a tablecloth, setting up the picnic, and I couldn't help but marvel at how perfect everything was. The sun hung high in the sky, bathing the landscape in a warm glow, the temperature just right for afternoons spent outdoors. Maximus opened the basket, pulling out an assortment of delicious-looking food, each item more tempting than the last. My heart skipped a beat when he pulled out a bottle-white wine. Did he know I loved it? Or was it just a lucky guess? I was sure. But either way, I was complaining. We dug into the food, the sweet, savory flavors making the afternoon even more enjoyable. Maximus poured the wine, and as we sipped it, the world seemed to slow down. The beauty of the day, the peaceful surroundings, and the company beside me all made it feel like I was living a dream. Birds flitted between the trees, their songs creating a perfect harmony with the soft wind that stirred the grass. The sky was clear, a deep blue with only the faintest wisps of clouds. The butterflies fluttered in and out of the flowers, adding a magical touch to the already enchanting scene. If heaven truly existed, this is what it would look like. Maximus, for the first time since I met him, seemed at peace. He wasn't brooding or aloof instead. He was smiling, his eyes calm and relaxed as he looked around, as if truly taking in the beauty of the place. For a moment, I forgot about everything else. I forgot about the tension that had always lingered between us. Today, it was just as this moment, this place, and the strange sense of tranquility that had settled between us. "Do you like it here?" Maximus asked, his voice calm, a subtle warmth in his words. "It's amazing. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." My excitement clear. I've always loved nature. And this place. It's magical. How did you find it? I used to come here when I was little. His voice softening slightly, a tone lower, as though the words themselves carried a weight of sadness and longing. But after my mother's absence, the subtle shift in his tone didn't go unnoticed. It was as if the very mention of his mother brought forth a quiet ache he had learned to bury. His eyes momentarily drifted to the shimmering lake, the sound of the waterfall gently lapping against the shore, as if seeking comfort in the tranquility of the moment. I could feel the heaviness in the air, and I instinctively wanted to reach out, to say something that might ease the unspoken pain, but I didn't know what to say. It was one of those moments where words felt inadequate. "I'm so sorry," I whispered softly, unsure if my words would reach him. I didn't mean to bring up something painful. He took a deep breath, a fleeting smile playing on his lips, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. He replied, his voice steady but tinged with an underlying sadness. "It's been a long time. I don't feel sad anymore. I've learned to live with it." We sat in silence for a moment, the air between us filled with unspoken understanding. It was clear that while Maximus had moved on, the scars of the past still lingered in subtle ways, shaping who he was today. He stared at the waterfall for a moment, as if lost in its endless flow, before breaking the silence with words that carried a weight I hadn't expected. "You know, she's not dead." I blinked, taken aback, unsure of how to respond. "Oh, I'm sorry again. I thought that." Maximus raised a hand, cutting off my apology with a calm gesture. "I don't mind talking about it." His voice steady, though it held an unspoken depth. "She disappeared a long time ago, but in my heart, I don't see it as a loss. I've accepted it." I nodded, quietly giving him the space to continue, though I was sure if he wanted to. The air between us seemed charged with a quiet understanding. The weight of his words settled in, and I felt a deep respect for his ability to come to terms with something so painful. But I knew I shouldn't press him further. I cleared my throat, gently shifting the subject. "This place, to my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Glancing around at the serene surroundings, I've never heard of it before. Why has anyone told me about it? Maximus leaned back against the oak tree, stretching out a bit as he regarded me. "Well, you're not from here, so it makes sense you wouldn't know," he explained. "But even the Pact doesn't come here much anymore. Only a few of us know about this place. It used to be sacred to our Pact. My great-grandfather discovered the clearing with the secret rock and decided it was where the Pact would settle. Every Sunday, all the Pact members would come here and offer sacrifices to the goddess for the fertile, and she gave us." His voice softened as his eyes grew distant, drifting into a memory only he could see. "Over the years, to my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." The tradition was forgotten, and it eventually stopped. I could hear the faint melancholy in his tone, and it tugged at my heart. "That's such a beautiful tradition," I said softly. "It must have meant a lot to the pack." Maximus nodded, the faintest hint of sadness in his expression. "But recently, my father tried to revive it. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked. No one seems to care anymore." His gaze grew distant for a moment as he let out a quiet sigh. "So, for us, this place became a family tradition. Every Sunday, we come here, have a picnic, and enjoy the peace it offers. It's our way of keeping the old ways alive, even if no one else does." I felt the weight of the moment, the significance of this place, and the history it held. It was more than just a beautiful setting, it was part of his family's legacy, something deeply personal. I felt honored to be a part of it, to share this quiet piece of his world. "It's beautiful," I said softly, my voice filled with admiration for both the place and the history behind it. "I'm really glad you brought me here." Maximus smiled slightly. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Genuine smile that felt different from the guarded expressions he often wore. "I'm glad you're here too." He poured more wine into our glasses, the sound of the liquid swirling and the gentle clink of the glass adding to the peaceful ambience of the day. "I wanted you to see this." His voice soft to know there's more to me than just the alpha. I took a sip of my wine, savoring the taste before responding with a smile. "I'm starting to see that. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." My tone genuine, and for the first time, I truly believed it. I was starting to understand the man behind the title. "That's a very beautiful story," I continued, the words slipping out before I realized it. "I've always enjoyed learning the stories of the places I live or visit." Maximus's eyes lit up, and a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Me too. This is something we have in common. I hope it's not the only thing we share." His gaze was intense. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." And it sent a shiver down my spine. I quickly looked away, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks as I stood up, needing some space. But before I could take a step, he reached out, grabbing my arm and pulling me gently toward him. His touch was warm, comforting even, but the sudden closeness caught me off guard. He brushed a strand of hair from my face with one hand while his other rested on my waist. I felt his presence overwhelming me as he lowered his face, bringing his lips to mine in a soft, sweet kiss. I froze for a moment, completely caught off guard. And then, instinctively, I pushed him away, stumbling backward. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed, frustration bubbling up inside me. I quickly turned, making my way toward the lake, needing some distance to clear my head. But Maximus didn't let me go far. In just a quick strides, he was beside me, his hand finding mine once more. "Why are you running away?" A hint of irritation in his voice. I jerked my arm free, turning to face him with a stern look. "Why did you do that?" I demanded, my voice sharp. "Do what?" Feigning innocence. "Why did you kiss me?" I asked again, my frustration building. "Why did you have to spoil the moment?" Maximus's expressions softened, but his smirk didn't fade. "I don't think I spoiled anything." His voice low and deliberate. "I kissed you because I wanted to, and I still want to. A few months ago, you didn't even want to see me, and now you take me to a picnic and kiss me. What are you aiming at?" My voice shaking with frustration. "I've told you before, you don't need to pretend we're mates when we're alone." Maximus looked at me with an intensity that made me feel like he was seeing right through me. "I'm not pretending," he said quietly, his tone more serious than I expected. "I really want to do mate things with you. 1 month ago, you were doing mate things with Gina. Now you want to do them with me. What changed your mind?" He hesitated for a moment, his eyes drifting down to the ground before meeting mine again. I realized some things. His voice quieter now, almost as if he was sure how to say it. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you realized some things. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Don't you think it's a bit late for that? No, he replied firmly. It's never too late for someone to change their mind. I shook my head, the frustration bubbling up inside me. You know something. This doesn't lead anywhere. You'd better go. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Turning to leave, but Maximus stepped forward, grabbing my arm once more. I jerked away from his touch, my anger flaring, which with this habit of grabbing people's arms. I snapped, my voice cold. Let me go. You're not going anywhere until we clear this up. His grip firm but not forceful, his eyes locked with mine, determined. I crossed my arms tightly over my chest, standing my ground. Everything is crystal clear to me. I don't need further explanations. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A sharp edge to my voice. I wasn't running anymore. If he had something to say, he could say it now. Maximus took a deep breath, exhaling slowly as if gathering his thoughts. We made a deal. His voice steady, and I intend to keep it. What's more, I think we're given the opportunity to make an effort here, and I intend to take it. I shook my head, not believing what I was hearing. I don't agree with that, I said firmly, my arms still crossed wide. His eyes narrowing as if searching for my reasoning. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. Because it feels like everything has been decided for me, like you've already made up your mind, and now I'm just supposed to go along with it. But that's not how this works. Maximus stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, but there was something in his eyes, something that showed he was just doing this for his own sake. I'm not asking you to go along with anything, he said softly. I'm asking for a chance. For us to try. For you and me. A real try. I shook my head slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. I don't think your reason for doing this is sincere. Maximus's eyes darkened slightly, his jaw tightening. What are you implying? His voice holding a trace of warning. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to face him. Despite the growing frustration inside me. I don't imply anything, I said sharply, meeting his gaze. I'm telling you clearly there's another reason why you're being nice to me. He raised an eyebrow. I stood tall, my heart pounding in my chest. After the accident, you realized you needed me by your side to have ultimate power, to be invincible. If I hadn't come to the hospital that night, you know you probably wouldn't have woken up again. That's where you started feeding our bond. Why you agreed to the arrangement I proposed, because it benefits you, not because you want to give us a second chance. The words came out in a rush, but once I said them, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Maximus was silent for a long moment, his eyes studying me intensely. When he spoke again, his tone was unexpectedly calm, though there was still a hardness beneath it. I understand your concern about this, he began, but don't fool yourself. You know I already have the ultimate power. My pack is one of the most powerful in the world, and I'm the most likely candidate for the throne. But that didn't happen overnight. I worked hard for it, all these years. And you weren't even here. So what makes you think I need you now? His words stung, the arrogance laced in every syllable. I wanted to argue, to refute him, but he was strong in some ways. What's more, he continued, we can't even be completely sure about my awakening. Like you said, I probably wouldn't have woken up if it weren't for you. But we can't be certain about it. Am I wrong? I swallowed hard, the fight draining out of me as his words settled in my mind now. I guess we aren't, I managed to say after a few moments of silence. This time, It was just his behavior that bothered me, but the cold truth in his words. My chest felt tight, and I found it hard to breathe. Maximus was quiet for a few seconds, his gaze softening just a little as he took a step closer to me. He reached for my hands, holding them gently. I know you don't trust me because of how I've treated you in the past. His voice sincere, almost pleading, and I truly believe you have every right to feel that way. But I want you to know that in telling you the truth when I say that I will try to correct my mistakes, all I ask is a chance to make things right. Just give us a chance. I looked at him, the sincerity in his eyes catching me off guard. What will it cost you in the end? He asked softly. I'm here. You're here. Why not give it a try? I stood there for a long time, torn between the past and the possibility of something new. Could I trust him? Was there a part of him that truly wanted to change? Or was it just the weight of responsibility that had pushed him to this point? My thoughts swirled in my head, but one thing was clear: I couldn't ignore his plea. I really don't know, I muttered, feeling utterly confused. As I slowly pulled my hands away from his, my mind was a blur, a whirlwind of questions and doubts. His words had shaken everything I thought I knew. The way I had viewed him, and even myself, no longer seemed so clear. Maximus had offered me a new perspective, one I hadn't considered until now. I wasn't sure what was right anymore. What had once seemed obvious felt like a maze of uncertainty. Take your time. His voice steady and reassuring. Just promise me you'll think about it. I nodded weakly, my voice barely above a whisper. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I mumbled, lost in my own thoughts, and began walking towards the path that led to the car. Behind me, I could hear the soft rustling of Maximus backing up the picnic. But even as I walked, I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling of confusion tightening in my chest. On one hand, he was right. Maximus was powerful, one of the most influential werewolves with prestige that spanned both the human and wolf worlds. I didn't need to stay by his side to maintain that power. He had done it on his own for years. He had built his empire, secured his position, and proven his strength time and time again. His success had never depended on me. But on the other hand, the bond between us, it would make him stronger, more invincible. And I couldn't deny that there was something tempting about the possibility of that kind of strength. If the bond worked the way it was supposed to, it could solidify his position even further. But, as he pointed out, we weren't sure if it would even work. Would the bond make him stronger? Or would it, as he feared, end up being his greatest weakness? The uncertainty gnawed at me. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't understand why he would risk it. Why would he want to even consider this bond with me now? After everything that had happened between us, what had changed? Why now, when he hadn't been interested before? What did he truly want? Had all his actions been for his own benefit? Or was there something more? Could he really want a second chance? Or was this just a tactical move on his part to cement his power and ensure his future? I felt overwhelmed, torn between the conflicting truths in front of me. His arguments made sense, but so did my doubts. Was he being genuine? Or was this all just a means to an end? How could I know? I didn't want to be another pawn at his game, but I also couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, there was more to him than I had originally thought. By the time we reached the car, I still didn't have any answers, only more questions, and the weight of the decision I would eventually have to make. Chapter 30, The Sorcery's Maximus POV. We arrived at the Pact house, the sound of the car engine fading as we pulled into the driveway. I watched Adelina quietly exit the vehicle and head towards her room, her silence still weighing heavily in the air. It had been a long ride back, and her quiet demeanor made my stomach twist with unease. I knew something was bothering her, something I couldn't quite grasp. The question of whether she would ever truly accept us was something that gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more behind her reluctance than she was letting on. As I walked to my office, My thoughts kept circling back to her. I had tried, in my own way, to get through to her today, to offer her a different perspective, but it hadn't been enough. She was still distant, still guarded, and that hurt more than I cared to admit. But the real question was, what was holding her back? I couldn't help but wonder if Nicholas had something to do with it. Their connection, however fleeting it might have been, seemed to have left imprint. I didn't understand why, but I couldn't deny that it seemed to haunt her. I pushed those thoughts aside as I entered my office, determined to focus on the task at hand. The sorceress was on her way, and Chris had already informed me that she'd be here any minute. I knew better than to let my personal frustrations cloud my judgment. As always, I would deal with the problem when it presented itself. It was a tactic that had served me well throughout the years. I was about to change that now. Minutes later, a soft knock echoed through the door, followed by Chris entering with Sonia. She was a striking woman, tall and slender, with long black hair that framed her face like an obsidian waterfall. Her turquoise eyes were piercing, their unnatural color giving her an almost ethereal quality. Despite her beauty, there was no mistaking her for anything other than what she was, a powerful sorceress capable of extraordinary things. I had seen firsthand the depths of her abilities and the ruthlessness with which she wielded them. Betrayal was not something Sonia took lightly. She didn't forgive, and she certainly didn't forget. As she entered, an almost tangible wave of energy radiated from her, filling the room with an oppressive weight. It was as if the very air had changed, thickened. In response to her presence, her gaze locked with mine, unblinking, and she gave a curt nod to Chris, dismissing him without so much as a word. He obeyed immediately, not even waiting for my approval. That spoke volumes about her influence, but also about the type of woman she was. Sonia was not one to be underestimated. She could take over the world if she wished, and she knew it. She moved towards me slowly, deliberately, her every step exuding a quiet menace. She was like a predator, her eyes never leaving mine as she closed the distance between us. I felt the tension in the air, a silent challenge. Normally, I was the one in control, the one who commanded the room, but Sonia was different. She didn't fear me, and that was something few could claim. She was not intimidated, not even by me. When she finally stopped in front of my desk, I stood my ground. I had seen her methods before, slow, calculated, designed to put you on edge. She was a master at this, a tactician, but I was easily swayed. Not by her, not by anyone. I met her gaze, unwavering. There was no need to play her games. I wasn't here to be intimidated. Alpha Maximus, she said with a small bow, her tone carrying both respect and a hint of amusement. I motioned for her to sit, and she gracefully settled into one of the chairs across from me, her every move measured and deliberate. Sonia had always been like this, calm, poised, and unreadable. I had known her since the days my father was relentlessly searching for my mother. Despite his efforts, he never succeeded in finding her, and deep down, I believed Sonia had a hand in that. Whether she was protecting my mother or playing her own mysterious game, I could never be sure. Still, Sonia had proven her value in ways I could not ignore. When I took over as Alpha, it was she who warned me of my uncle's treachery and his plot to take my life. Her information had saved me, and from that moment on, I had kept her close. Whenever I faced a challenge or sought to accomplish the impossible, Sonia was the one I turned to. She was as dangerous as she was brilliant, and her counsel had been indispensable time and again. Now, she was studying me with those unnerving turquoise eyes, the kind that seemed to see straight into a person's soul. It was just a look, it was as if she was measuring me, weighing my intentions and my resolve. I knew she had already guessed why I summoned her. Sonia always had a way of knowing things before anyone else did, but she wasn't one to act until she heard the request spoken aloud. Leaning back in her chair, she arched an elegant brow, her lips curving into the faintest of smirks. Well, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, she said smoothly, breaking the silence. We both know I don't make house calls without good reason. So, why don't you tell me what it is you want from me this time? Her voice was calm, but there was a sharpness to it. A subtle reminder that her help always came at a price. I met her gaze evenly, refusing to let her see even the smallest crack in my resolve. I knew how only operated, and I wasn't about to show weakness. I need your insight. I began, my tone firm and unwavering. There's a situation developing that requires delicate handling. I want your help ensuring it turns in my favor. Her smirk deepened, but she didn't interrupt, waiting for me to elaborate. She was always like this, making you lay your cards on the table before she revealed her own. It concerns Adelina, I continued, my voice steady, though I felt a flicker of tension as I spoke her name. Just conflicted about our bond, hesitant about giving us a second chance. I need to understand what's holding her back and if there's something or someone influencing her decision. Sonia tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. Oh, the mate bond. Her tone tinged with curiosity. Such a fascinating and complex thing. And you believe something or someone is clouding her judgment. In not ruling out possibility, I admit it. Her hesitation runs deeper than I anticipated. She's wary of my intentions, and I can't blame her for that. But I need clarity. I need to know what's truly at the root of her reluctance. Sonia leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the arms of the chair. Her expression grew more serious, and for a moment, I could see the full weight of her power behind those turquoise eyes. You're asking me to delve into her mind, her emotions, she said quietly, to uncover truths she may not even be aware of herself. I nodded. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She studied me for a long moment, her gaze never wavering. Finally, she spoke. You understand the risks of what you're asking, don't you? The bond is delicate, and tampering with it could have consequences for both of you. I do, I replied firmly. But this isn't just about me. It's about the future of this pack and what we can achieve together. I need her by my side, and I need to know if that's possible. Sonia's lips curled into a sly smile. Oh, the Luna with her controversial nature. Such an intriguing choice. She leaned back slightly, her sharp eyes boring into me. Your priest may have seen good omens during the lunar ceremony, but I know you too well. You always want more certainty, don't you? I didn't respond. Knowing she was strong, she continued. Here's how we'll proceed. I want you to focus on the questions weighing on your mind while I shuffle the cards. When I tell you to stop, you will clear your thoughts completely, make your mind a blank slate, and I will deal the cards. Are you ready? Yes, I said curtly, motioning for her to begin. Sonia started shuffling the cards, her movements quick and precise, each shuffle producing a rhythmic sound that filled the room. Her hands moved with practiced ease, and as she worked, I focused my thoughts on Adelina and what lay ahead. After a few moments, she paused, still shuffling, and locked her gaze with mine. Stop, she commanded, her voice firm. I cleared my mind as instructed, watching as she dealt most of the cards onto the desk, leaving a smaller stack in her left hand. The atmosphere grew heavier with each passing moment. The silence thickened, unnerving. I waited, but my patience was thinning. So, my impatience breaking through. Her eyes flicked up to mine, sharp and unyielding. Don't trust me, she snapped. Sonia resumed dealing the cards, her movement slower now, more deliberate. Then she stopped again, fixing me with an intense stare. Her turquoise eyes darkened, turning to a stormy grey, clear sign that the goddess had descended, taking possession of her. When she spoke, her voice was not entirely her own. It was layered with a deep, otherworldly resonance. You will get what your heart desires. Drive AKO. But the path will not be easy. Prepare yourself. The battle ahead will be hard and painful. Wounds you thought long healed will be reopened. Enemies surround you, many in number and closer than you realize. I sat frozen, her words striking me like a thunderclap, reverberating through my mind. But Sonia wasn't finished. To achieve what your soul longs for, you must overcome the darkness within you. Her voice steady yet weighted with meaning. Walk the path that fate lays before you with pure intentions. The weapon I sent you will be your key to success. But beware, only if your heart remains pure will you emerge victorious. Should you stray, the price you will pay will be unbearable. Her piercing gaze felt as though it was dissecting every corner of my soul. Then, her tone softened but retained its gravitas. Much is at stake. Drive AKO far more than your ambitions. Tread carefully. The room fell into a suffocating silence, the air heavy with her words. They weren't just a reading, they were a warning, a prophecy, and a challenge all at once. For a moment, I cowed and move, cowed and speak. My thoughts raced, trying to pass the full weight of her message. I understood one thing with absolute clarity: there was no turning back from this path. No room for error. Suddenly, Sonia's body sagged slightly, her head bowing forward as if drained. She closed her eyes, her once powerful demeanor giving way to a fleeting vulnerability. A long breath escaped her lips. When she lifted her head again, her eyes were no longer stormy grey but the usual vibrant turquoise, signaling the departure of the goddess. I hope I was helpful to you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She whispered, her voice barely audible but tinged with exhaustion. I nodded slowly, still grappling with everything she had said. You were, I replied, though the words felt hollow, my mind too consumed to express more. Sonia rose gracefully, her movements deliberate yet tired. She gave me a final, knowing lot before leaving the room. And as the door clicked shut behind her, the silence enveloped me once again. But this time it felt far heavier. For a moment, I stood there, staring at the closed door. The room felt oddly empty without her presence, the weight of her words still lingering in the air. The clock on the wall read 2 in the morning, and exhaustion began to settle over me like a heavy blanket, pushing the thoughts crowding my mind to the side. Turning off the office lamp, I left the room and made my way to my bedroom. Once inside, I turned on the lights and instinctively approached the internal door that connected my room to Adelina's, pressing my ear against it. I listened. Silence. She was fast asleep. Relieved, I stepped back, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I stripped off my clothes, climbed into bed, and let the day's events wash over me one last time before closing my eyes. Darkness quickly claimed me, pulling me into a deep and dreamless sleep. Third-person POV. It is 3 in the morning, and I am in the dungeon cleaning. As always, silence hangs heavily in the air, broken only by the faint, distant creaks of the old stone walls. The tortures ended hours ago, leaving a grim stillness behind. The high-ranked wolves have long retreated to their chambers. The guards remain stationed at their posts, and the detainees are locked away in their cells. I am an Omega, the lowest of the low, and my job is to clean up the aftermath of the interrogations, or, more accurately, the torture sessions. When they offered me this position 3 years ago, I accepted without hesitation. I had no choice. I have 3 pups to raise, and this was the only way to provide for them. But after 3 long years in this hellish place, I can say without doubt that I despise my job. The blood. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The heartless brutality of it all, it's unbearable. That's why I deliberately wait until the interrogations are over before I venture down here to clean. I can't face the prisoners' suffering directly, so I come only when the chambers are empty, when the pain has subsided into silence. Tonight is no different. I'm scrubbing the blood-stained floor of one of the torture rooms, the metallic smell of blood thick in the air, when something unusual catches my attention. My ears prick up, and I freeze mid. Despite being a weak Omega, my hearing is sharper than most, and I can hear faint voices through the thick stone walls. My heart starts to race. Whispers in the dungeon at this hour. It's unusual now. It's suspicious. I cautiously approach the wall where the whispers seem to be coming from. The closer I get, the clearer the voices become. To men, speaking in low, urgent tones. I know I shouldn't be doing this. Eavesdropping is dangerous, especially for someone like me. If caught, it won't just cost me my job, it could cost me my life. But curiosity has always been my greatest weakness. And tonight, it wins again. There's a small hole in the wall, barely noticeable, but large enough to peer through. I hesitate for only a second before lowering myself to look. Through the hole, I see them. 2 men, standing in the shadows. One is tall with dark hair and piercing forest, green eyes, his demeanor commanding. The other is shorter, with equally dark hair and sharp, calculating brown eyes. Their posture and confidence mark them as high-ranked wolves. But it's their scent that gives them away. They don't belong to this pack. I swallow hard, my pulse quickening. Foreign wolves in the dungeon at this hour. It's not just suspicious, it's alarming. What could they be doing here? And why are they whispering in secret? I press my ear closer, straining to make out their words. Whatever they're discussing, it's clear they don't want anyone to hear it. My instincts scream at me to back away, to leave before I get caught in something far beyond my station. But I can't. Something tells me this isn't just a counter. Whatever's happening here, it's important and dangerous. And now, I'm right in the middle of it. The tall man's voice echoed faintly through the stone walls, his anger palpable. I have been waiting for you for nearly 2 hours. Where the hell have you been? His frustration burned in his tone, sharp and demanding. The shorter man shifted uncomfortably, his reply defensive. I didn't come earlier, there was a lot of traffic outside Maximus' office. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Why, sir? The tall man pressed, his tone icy. My people told me that a woman visited him this evening. She stayed for a few hours. The shorter one explained cautiously. The tall man scoffed, irritation flaring. That's the big secret. Everyone knows Maximus is it on one. She wasn't like the others. The shorter man insisted. She was strangely dressed and seemed foreign. The tall man raised an eyebrow, sarcasm dripping from his words. Maybe it's one of Maximus' sexual role appeals. Who cares? You made me lose 2 hours waiting because of Maximus' foreplay. Are you completely an idiot? The shorter man bristled at the insult, but kept his tone steady. I couldn't pass the guards. There were too many stationed outside his door and all along the hallway. Maybe he had them there to make sure he was caught in the act by Adelina. The tall man growled under his breath. This is the last time. I don't tolerate being made to wait. Don't you dare let this happen again. For your sake. His tone shifted, becoming sharp and focused. Now tell me, what did you find out about Maximus' ex-lover? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She was completely enraged by Maximus' behavior. The shorter man reported. She can't accept that Adelina is the new Luna. She feels cheated, abandoned. She had pinned all her hopes on her love with Maximus. Do you think we can't trust her? The tall man asked, his green eyes narrowing. Yes. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The shorter man confirmed with conviction. Especially if we offer her the Luna's position in exchange for her help. The tall man smirked. Great. You'll make the approach. I'm counting on you don't screw it up. Now what about our spies? Are they in position? I want Maximus and Adelina's every move tracked. Have they discovered anything yet? They're already in place. As you ordered, the shorter man assured him. But so far, everything seems normal. The relationship between Maximus and Adelina appears to be genuine. Maybe Aegeus had a change of heart and decided to accept her. The tall man sneered, his voice dripping with skepticism. I don't believe it. Maximus is far too selfish and calculative for such altruistic nonsense. There has to be a serious reason behind this sudden change, and I want you to find out what it is quickly. Is that clear? Yes, sir, the shorter man replied with urgency. If you uncover anything else, send me a message on the number I gave you. The tall man ordered, his voice low but commanding. Now go and don't get caught by the guards. Yes. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading enthusiasm. The shorter man said, his tone obedient but hurried. The tall man watched him leave before muttering to himself with a wicked grin, his voice laced with dark ambition. I may not be alpha of the world yet, but I'm so close. He threw his head back and laughed. A devilish, chilling sound that echoed to the dungeon's dark corridors.